Some people smile so convincingly that even pain starts to doubt itself. They've mastered the art of looking okay while carrying the weight of emotional exhaustion. Their smiles aren't lies. They're shields, built from years of learning that showing pain only brings more pain. Pretending to be fine often starts in childhood. When expressing sadness or fear was met with dismissal or punishment, they learned to suppress it. Over time, emotional invisibility became survival. And now, they can't tell the difference between being strong and being numb. The "I'm fine" mask is a trauma response disguised as maturity. It's not confidence, it's conditioning. These people are terrified of becoming a burden, so they downplay every wound, telling others it's nothing, even when it's everything. Psychologically, this behavior aligns with avoidant coping mechanisms, a way of managing stress by pretending it doesn't exist. It's the brain's desperate attempt to protect itself from emotional overwhelm by denying vulnerability altogether. People who pretend to be fine are often the ones who care the most. They sense everyone's emotions but hide their own, because they've internalized the idea that their pain is less important than others. Empaths turned actors in their own stories. Ironically, their strength becomes their curse. They're praised for being resilient, for always holding it together. Yet that same praise reinforces their silence, trapping them in a loop where breaking down feels like failure in psychology. This pattern is known as toxic self-reliance, an extreme independence formed when trust was broken too many times. They learned early, depending on others invites disappointment, so they became their own emotional caretakers. Inside, there's a quiet ache for connection. They want someone to notice the cracks behind their composure, to ask, "Are you really okay?" and mean it. But fear stops them. Fear that their truth will push people away. The fine act is emotionally expensive. It costs authenticity, rest, and self-acceptance. They carry unspoken grief like a secret debt, one that grows heavier each time they say "I'm okay" when they're breaking inside. Over time, suppression alters their emotional landscape. Neuroscientific studies show that constant emotional suppression can rewire the brain's stress response, leading to chronic anxiety, fatigue, and emotional numbness. People who pretend they're fine often struggle with identity. When you perform happiness long enough, it starts to feel real until one day, it collapses. And when it does, they don't know who they are without the mask. They fear vulnerability because it's been weaponized against them. The last time they opened up, it was used to judge, mock, or abandon them. Now, silence feels safer than honesty. Their relationships often feel one-sided. They listen deeply, give advice, and support others but rarely receive the same in return. Not because people don't care, but because they never show that they need care too. This cycle of emotional suppression creates an inner splitter version of themselves that lives in the world, and another that hides in the shadows. The hidden self is the one that cries silently at night, asking, "When will someone see me?" They've mistaken emotional control for emotional health. But being composed isn't the same as being healed. Suppression might keep them functional, but it slowly disconnects them from their humanity. Many develop perfectionist tendencies. If they can't be emotionally perfect, they'll be outwardly perfect, working harder, achieving more, looking flawless to compensate for the inner chaos they're too afraid to reveal. Psychologists call this emotional masking, the act of concealing true feelings to conform to social expectations. It's a coping mechanism often seen in trauma survivors, people pleasers, and those with chronic guilt. They crave understanding, but the thought of being truly understood terrifies them. Because if someone saw the real pain beneath their smile, they'd no longer be the strong one. And losing that identity feels like losing control. Deep down, they're exhausted. Pretending requires constant effort, filtering every emotion, softening every truth, calibrating every expression. It's emotional acting, performed daily without applause. Their mind whispers, "You don't deserve to fall apart." So they don't. Instead, they collapse quietly in private, through insomnia, overthinking, and an ache that even rest can't fix. Many of them are praised for being emotionally mature, but what the world calls maturity is often just emotional suppression in disguise, a refusal to feel, because feeling once led to pain. They carry invisible scars, not from battles fought outwardly, but from the wars waged within, the constant push between wanting to express and needing to hide. People who pretend to be fine often overanalyze everything. Their hyper-awareness stems from emotional neglect. They had to read rooms perfectly to stay safe. Now, it's automatic. Every smile, every tone, every silence is dissected. When they finally try to open up, it feels awkward, foreign. Vulnerability doesn't come naturally. It feels like exposure, like standing unarmored in a storm. So they retreat again into "I'm fine." Psychologically, they experience alexithymia, difficulty identifying and expressing emotions. Years of suppressing feelings dulls emotional vocabulary, leaving them unsure of what they truly feel. Even joy feels temporary to them. When something good happens, part of them braces for loss, as if happiness is just a setup for disappointment. Their minds can't trust peace. They may appear calm, but inside, they're constantly fighting waves of guilt, fear, and sadness. Their calmness isn't peace, it's fatigue, from feeling too much for too long. They avoid conflict, not out of weakness, but out of emotional burnout. Every argument threatens to expose the emotions they've worked so hard to bury. In therapy, many of these individuals express confusion when asked, "What do you need right now?" Because their needs have been ignored for so long that they stopped recognizing them. Some find solace in solitude. Alone, they can drop the mask for a while. But even then, the quiet reminds them of the emptiness they've been trying to avoid. These people often attract emotionally unavailable partners, because deep down, they mirror what they tolerate. Their wounds resonate with others, who are equally afraid of vulnerability. At work, they become overachievers. Productivity becomes their emotional distraction, a way to stay too busy to feel. Success becomes their bandage, not their healing. The greatest tragedy is how invisible they become. Because they seem fine, no one checks in. No one notices the subtle withdrawal, the tired smiles, or the eyes that look alive but aren't. Their laughter can be misleading. They joke about pain to deflect it, turning sorrow into humor, a psychological defense mechanism called self-deprecating masking. It's how they control the narrative before the pain controls them. They may appear emotionally intelligent because they understand others deeply, but their own emotions remain locked away, unexplored and unhealed. The biggest fear beneath their calmness is rejection. They believe that being real will cost them love. So they give the world a palatable version of themselves instead. Inside them lives a silent child who once cried for help and no one came. That moment taught them that silence is safer than honesty, and they've lived by that rule ever since. People who pretend to be fine aren't liars. They're survivors. They learned that the world isn't kind to visible pain, so they adapted perfectly, painfully, invisibly. Their healing begins the day they stop pretending. When they finally whisper, "I'm not okay," the armor cracks, and light begins to seep through. True strength isn't silenced softness. It's the courage to admit you're human, in a world that worships control. It's crying without apology, and still showing up tomorrow. Many discover healing through small acts of honesty. Telling one person the truth, writing feelings they've never spoken, letting someone see the unfiltered version of them, even for a moment. Vulnerability doesn't destroy them, it liberates them. The pain loses power when it's named, and what once felt unbearable begins to shrink under the weight of truth. They start realizing that pretending doesn't protect them, it isolates them. And connection, though terrifying, is the only medicine for loneliness. Healing is slow. Some days they'll still say "I'm fine" out of habit. But every time they choose honesty instead, a small part of them comes back to life. They learn that love doesn't require performance. The right people will stay, even when you're broken. Especially when you're broken, forgiving themselves becomes the hardest part. They must release the shame of years spent hiding, and accept that pretending was never weakness. It was survival. Over time, authenticity becomes easier. The smile remains, but it's no longer armor, it's real, born not from fear, but from peace. They begin to understand that pain isn't an enemy, it's a messenger. It doesn't come to destroy, but to reveal what's still unhealed. In the end, they find strength, not in pretending they're fine, but in admitting they're not. That's where real connection begins, and where the lonely heart finally rests. Because pretending to be fine might keep others comfortable, but it keeps your soul imprisoned. And one day, the bravest thing you'll ever do is tell the truth about how you feel. Some people learned early that showing pain only made things worse. Maybe when they cried, no one came. Maybe when they opened up, they were mocked or ignored. So now, they wear their silence like armor, not because they don't feel, but because they've learned that feeling out loud is dangerous. They have mastered the art of emotional minimalism, saying I'm fine, even when their soul is collapsing. It's not about deception, it's about survival. Their calm tone and steady expression are rehearsed defenses, designed to protect a heart that once bled too openly. In private, their thoughts echo like footsteps in an empty hall. They replay conversations, overanalyze small moments, and punish themselves for emotions they never showed. To the world, they seem composed, but their silence is loud, and their peace is staged. These people often excel in caretaking roles, the listener, the comforter, the one who has it all together. But every time they help someone else heal, a quiet part of them whispers, "When will it be my turn?" They give endlessly, but rarely receive. Emotional suppression has consequences. What's buried doesn't die, it festers. Over time, the unspoken grief becomes anxiety, the swallowed anger becomes fatigue, and the forced smile becomes a form of emotional suffocation. They fear being a burden. They've convinced themselves that their pain is smaller, their needs less important. So they downplay everything. It's nothing, don't worry, I'll handle it. But inside, they crave someone who can see past their mask without needing to be told. Relationships with such people often feel one-sided. They'll be there for you, always ready to listen. But when it's your turn to ask how they are, the walls go up. It's not rejection, it's self-protection. Vulnerability feels like handing someone a weapon. Their biggest struggle isn't pretending to be fine, it's the loneliness that follows. Because when no one sees your pain, no one can touch it. They've built a life that looks peaceful from the outside but feels hollow on the inside. Psychologically, this pattern is known as emotional masking, a coping mechanism rooted in avoidance. It reduces immediate discomfort, but increases long-term disconnection. The person becomes alienated, not only from others, but from their own emotional truth. Healing begins with recognition. When they finally admit, "I'm not okay," it's not weakness, it's the first act of strength. The moment they allow themselves to be seen, the armor starts to crack. And real peace, not performative calm, can finally enter. For many, pretending to be fine becomes part of their identity. They fear that, without the mask, they'll lose respect, control, or love. So they keep performing. But what they don't realize is, authenticity attracts deeper connections than perfection ever could. When you've lived behind emotional walls for years, vulnerability feels foreign. It's awkward, scary, even painful. But like any unused muscle, openness grows stronger with gentle practice, a safe conversation, a tear that isn't hidden, a truth that's spoken aloud. It's not that they lack emotion. It's that their emotions have nowhere safe to go. Every time they say I'm fine, they're really saying, I don't trust that I'll be loved if I'm not. Healing means learning to believe that love can exist even in imperfection. The truth is, pretending to be fine doesn't make you strong, it just makes you tired. The bravest people aren't the ones who never break down. They're the ones who face their pain with honesty, even when it's messy, uncomfortable, or raw. And sometimes, the people who smile the brightest are the ones who fought the darkest battles alone. They don't need fixing. They need someone patient enough to sit with their silence, gentle enough to earn their trust, and real enough to remind them, you don't have to pretend anymore. Over time, pretending becomes second nature. They can smile through pain, joke through exhaustion, and even comfort others while silently breaking. It's a tragic talent to appear peaceful while carrying chaos. And it leaves them unseen in rooms full of people who think they're okay. When someone finally asks, "Are you really okay?" they often freeze. They're so used to hiding that the question feels invasive. But deep down, they long for it. They want someone to care enough to ask twice, to wait through the silence, and to mean it. Their greatest fear is that if they show their real self, the tired, messy, emotional self, people will walk away. But in truth, the ones who stay after seeing your pain are the ones who were meant to be there all along. Vulnerability filters out the temporary. The irony is, they often give the advice they need most. It's okay to feel, they tell others. You don't have to be strong all the time. Yet they can't extend that same compassion to themselves. Because they've tied their worth to resilience, not authenticity. Eventually, every mask cracks. Sometimes it's through tears, sometimes silence, sometimes a breakdown no one expected. But when that moment comes, when the truth finally escapes, it's not the end of their strength. It's the beginning of their healing.